Okay, so why is this called crucible therapy?
So the crucible metaphor comes from metalworking, and a crucible is a heat-proof container of some sort that you can put into a very hot fire in a forge, and it can melt down metal, burn off impurities, make the metal malleable so that you can form it into something different. And so
Mm.
in this metaphor, the crucible is your marriage. That's the container, and the heat is the inevitable pressure of really loving someone for a long time, of being in a committed relationship where you have to either grow or you're gonna hurt each other like over and over.
So the idea is two people step into the crucible of marriage, which has nothing to do with a crucifix. It's not a religious idea. A
Yeah.
crucible is a crucible is just a container that can tolerate immense heat. And so if I put, say, two metals into a crucible and I heat up the two metals, then I can form an alloy. Or if I put a metal that has impurities in it into a crucible and heat it up, then I can remove the impurities by heating it up to a certain temperature. And the idea is that when two people step into marriage, we're entering a crucible, and that crucible is going to refine us and make us stronger if we approach it correctly. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it is an important point that it has nothing to do with the crucifix or with religion or anything like that. Like this is just a personal development theory, really.
Yeah, people often ask me if it's a religious approach, which it's not. Um, but it's a great name. Um, Most people never heard of it. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's most people have some familiarity with the idea of differentiation, which is really key to it. But they often think about that in a more limited way than how it really is. Like people think about differentiation as just growing away or apart. And it's not quite that. It's like becoming capable of being close to another person and staying true to yourself.
so I don't have to choose between being true to me and belonging to someone else.
Right. Yeah, which we all want. We all want both those things, but they seem to be in contradiction sometimes. Like this is the classic problem people pleasers have, is that they feel like being close to another person means that they have to shift and mold themselves into who that person wants them to be, and they end up giving up their sense of self, and then of course resenting that.
So without differentiation, I end up choosing between compliance and defiance. So if my wife wants me to do something, I feel like I either have to comply, even though I don't want to, or I have to, fight back in some immature way. Instead of
Hmm.
the third way would be the differentiated way, which is I am going to hold on to who I am and what I want, and I'm also going to make room for what you want. But in the end, my decision is based on my own desires and values, and it's based on how much I care about you. But I don't feel like I have to give up myself to be in a relationship with you. Like you obviously get to make your choices about whether you want to be in a relationship with me, but I don't feel compelled to do certain things just to make you happy.
Hmm. Yeah, and so you might end up doing something that isn't your preference or that's really hard for you, and still acting out of your own desire in the sense that you want to be with this person, you care about them, and so you want them to have more of what would make them happy, and you're willing to push yourself on that front. So
Mhm.
it's not like I only do things that I'm in the mood to do, It isn't that version.
So no, it's not. Another way of talking about it is it's a way of having togetherness without giving up separateness. So I can be my
Yeah.
own person and still be together. I can be part of a relationship without giving up who I am at my core.
Yeah, I really like that framing.
So the next thing we wanted to talk about was self-validated intimacy, which is very closely tied to this. If I want to create intimacy in my relationship, one thing I can do is I can reveal something about myself that might make my wife uncomfortable. And the reason that's the thing I would reveal is that those are the things that we hide. And so, like, I've been married for a couple of decades, which means that anything my wife would want to like all the things about me that she really likes, she already knows because I don't hide those things. The things I hide are the things that she might not like. The things I hide are the things that she might not like so much, and so I'm very sensitive, obviously, to what her preferences are and what her sensitivities are, and so I'm pretty good at masking and hiding things that might upset her, but that leads to a low intimacy relationship, and so in a multi-decade marriage, basically, the things that I might hesitate to reveal to my wife are the things I know might not go over so well, or the things she might not validate. And so the idea of self-validated intimacy is I'm going to reveal more of myself, even though what I reveal won't be or might not be validated by the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's like the act of having a self while being close to another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're willing to embody that, you're willing to reveal it, like you're living in having a sense of self. You're clear about it and you're willing to show it. And it's so why don't people do that? What's hard about that?
Well, do you have any examples of what that might look like? Like, what would be something that, um,
Well, it's
let's
anytime you take
say, go ahead. Did something come to mind?
it's anytime you take a position that you don't know going in that your partner's going to agree.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be anything from like what car you want to how you want to parent your children, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
have a child, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things where, or what you believe religiously, that's actually a big one for a lot of couples is taking their positions on religion or on politics and knowing that their partner doesn't share all of their views and
Mm-hmm.
being willing to both be open and real about who they are and then also be close to this other person and care about this other person
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't see it the same way.
I think the single most common category is me revealing to you what I think of you. So
Mm.
revealing my mind to you and that this is how I see you, this is the way I see you, as opposed to most of us are pretty good at pretending that I see you the way you want to be seen. Unless I'm trying to get at you, in which case I'll do something else. But I think a lot of the time, most of us are presenting a view of the other person that is designed to appeal to the other person. We're reflecting back a false self-reflection.
Hmm. I hadn't thought about that being the main way. It is a big one. I guess the other category that seems really big to me is just your preferences, like being honest about what you want and
Mm-hmm.
what matters to you and on anything where your partner has to agree or well, they don't have to agree, but like where you can't unilaterally do it.
So one thing I've been experimenting with is asking couples to say the words "I want you to,"
Hmm.
because it's so direct and it's unusual. And so another way to say it is "I prefer" or "I have a preference" or "I would like." I work with so many couples where they don't express their desires to each other at all, and so I've been experimenting with this idea of why don't you go all the way to just say it the most direct way possible, which is I want you to start doing this or I want you to stop doing that.
Hmm.
Uh, because I think there's some utility in going all the way to the most direct way of expressing yourself and then maybe softening it later. I do think it's more pleasant to hear I would like than I want.
Hmm.
But if I'm working with someone who never expresses their desires in a collaborative way, I don't know. I think there might be some utility in saying it in the most plain way possible. Have you ever tried that or?
Hmm. Not exactly like that. I have people go from complaint to request, which is similar.
Hmm.
I don't
It's
offer
very
them
similar. There
specific.
are softer ways of making a request, but well, okay. Can you explain what that means? Going from complaint to
Well,
request.
it's often easier to know what you don't want and don't like,
Hmm.
than to come up with a positive. But like, if your partner does something you don't want and you tell them, "Hey, I don't like that. Don't do that anymore," they might even stop, but they might do something that feels the same way as a
Hmm.
replacement. And so, I just think it's more effective and also more intimate in the sense of self-revealing to
Hmm.
get clear for yourself about, well, what is it that I want? And it's often kind of the opposite of what you're getting. If
Hmm.
you've got a partner that talks down to you, one thing you could do is get mad at them and say like, you're so condescending, but you'd probably get more traction if instead you could settle yourself down and say something like, I really want you to talk to me like we're on the same team or like we're in
Hmm.
this together. Um, I I think with most people you're going to get more traction that way. But it could be about, if one thing that comes up with couples a lot is that one partner doesn't like the kissing, for example. And it's one thing, it's really hard to work with feedback of like, I don't like how you kiss. And it's much easier if you're willing to get clear for yourself about like, well, what is it I want? And then directly ask for it. Like, I really want you to brush
Hmm.
your teeth and, go slower and be softer when you do this or
Hmm.
whatever it is. But it's like, instead of leaving your partner fumbling around in the dark trying 17 different wrong ways to get closer to you,
Hmm.
and even picking fights often are a way of getting closer, then you invite them into what you really want.
I think there's a certain vulnerability in expressing what I really want because the closer I get to telling you exactly what I want, the more I'm facing the reality that you might not give it to me and that it's not my choice.
Yeah.
And so I think we tend to beat around the bush. We tend to hold on to this kind of plausible deniability. Oh, I didn't really want that anyway. Because it's like I'm holding on to the fantasy that, the reason you're not giving it to me is you don't know,
Yeah.
or, maybe I haven't made it clear enough what I want. And so I often tell people just to go say it in the simplest way possible. If my wife is talking to me in an unkind way, for example, I might say, I don't want you to talk to me that way. And I really think I don't know, I think there's virtue in saying things in the simplest way possible. If I add in any kind of qualifier, like, if I could say, oh, I want you, I think you're speaking to me unkindly, well, now that definition of a kindly is up for debate, right? But if I say, I don't want you to talk to me how you're talking to me, there's not really anything to debate there because it's not like she has any ground to stand on if she says, well, you don't, you know, she can't really disagree with what I want, what I don't want. I mean, she doesn't have to do it, obviously. But I think expressing desire is so powerful because it's mine to define what my desire is. I get to say what I want. And it's pretty hard for someone to come back and say, no, you don't really want that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to me, this is like the realm that adult love lives in is the realm of desire and wanting and doing things for each other because of your own and the other person's desire. Like caring about that. That's what love is caring about what
Mhm.
wants for themselves. And short of that, like I just don't think it's love. Um, so I think that's a huge thing is it's incredibly vulnerable to face the reality of I really want this. I'll be sad if I don't get it, and I don't control whether I get it. And as soon as I put this out there as a clear request, I have to face that I only get a choice about how I'm going to handle myself, regardless of whether I got what I wanted, right? Which is hard. I think another reason that this is hard for people is that a lot of parenting strategies use, reward and punishment, and to maneuver your child through reward and punishment, you're using your knowledge of what they want, um, to change their behavior, right? And so, if this is done by a parent that's maybe not that mature and it is sometimes misusing this, then kids are going to learn it's maybe not a good idea to let my parents know exactly how much I want these things because then they could be withheld from me, um,
Mhm.
or taken away. And so that's,
So I never thought about that before, but it makes it not in my best interest to reveal my desires to my parents.
yeah, depending on what kind of parents you have. Like, do you have parents who are likely to be withholding, or to use
Mm.
that as leverage? And if you do, yeah, I think you'll form a pattern of thinking like if I reveal my desires to my spouse, they also will use this as leverage. And I don't want to
Mm.
be leveraged.
No, that's a beautiful thought.
I see people who come from like a lot of trauma having the most difficulty with even knowing what they want and then with sharing it.
You said something the other day that really stuck with me, which is you said, I'm not sure that we ever let go of the patterns that are already ingrained in our brains. I think that we just form new patterns that go alongside the old patterns, and now we have something new that we can do. That just really stuck with me. That seems really true to me. I was sitting in men's group. I joined this men's group a couple of years ago, and it's been so useful for me because most of the time in men's group, I'm sitting with these men, and I'm listening to them. I don't talk that much in men's group. It's mostly listening, and I'm listening to them, and it's just this amazing opportunity for me to confront myself over and over and over on how judgmental am I being right now. And
Mhm.
context for that is that I, by nature, am intensely judgmental. I mean, just viciously judgmental, and I always have been. And I was thinking about this last night sitting in men's group because I use men's group as an opportunity to confront my own judgmental nature. Because I'll sit and I'll look at these men, and my instinct is anytime a man speaks, my instinct is to go into some sort of internal silent judgment of that man.
Mm.
And I can just look at that and be like, what is the other path?
Yeah.
This idea that, okay, the judgmental path is there. It's actually that it's been really useful for me because I used to, like, my instinct when I first started become aware of how judgmental I was. Then I became judgmental about me being
Yeah.
judgmental. And that also, that's the
Right. That
same
doesn't
path
help.
with like a different twist on it. But what I've learned to do now is I can see myself being judgmental, and I can approach that with compassion, and I can imagine, okay, there's a parallel path, and just think, what would it be like? Can I jump over to this other groove in my brain that I'm building? I'm working on walking this new path, which is listening to another person with compassion and understanding, and not judging them, not looking down on them, not criticizing them in my mind. And I was just doing that for like an hour last night, and it was kind of this delightful experience of just, it was almost like a meditative thing. It's like when I meditate on my breath, and I'm just like, notice that I'm thinking, return to the sensation of breathing, but it's non-judgmental. It's notice and
Mhm.
return, notice and return. And so last
Yeah.
night I was noticing my judgment. This probably happened 50 times.
Yeah.
Noticing judgment, returning to compassion, noticing judgment, and it was just over and over and over. But I was doing it without judging myself. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's me judging again. And I was like, okay, back to compassion. I don't know. It was just kind of this delightful experience. And I left that men's group that night just so grateful for having kind of this safe place to just practice this. It's like the perfect place for me to just notice what happens in my brain.
Oh, that's awesome. And part of what you're describing there is this shift out of like, I am judgmental to, I have a judgmental pattern, like this exists in my brain, it's wired in there. But as you talked, you shifted from like totally identifying with this to, this is one aspect of the way my brain works. And there's other ways it can
Yeah.
work. That you actually were able, while you were actively practicing it, to drop the judgment of yourself and of others
Mm,
over and over.
mm.
So yeah, I got Barbara Fairfield talked about that idea that we never get rid of our like hard wiring. And I wish it
It
were
makes
different,
so much sense. I mean,
but
to me, it reminds me of just the process of myelination in the brain, which is
yeah,
myelination is the brain's process of reinforcing and hardening certain pathways. So, as a certain pathway in the brain gets myelinated, it's easier for the brain to follow that path.
right.
And so that would make sense that, I mean, I don't really know whether myelination decreases over time if you use the pathway less or not, but I know that it can increase. And so I just like this idea of like, now I'm myelinating a new pathway, and
Right.
when I have a new pathway that's well traveled, it's easier to follow that new pathway. But I don't have to be that upset about falling back into the old pathway again. If I
Mhm.
notice it, then that's what matters. Noticing what I'm doing, noticing that I'm in my pattern.
Right. Yeah, and I use the metaphor of roads where you start off with like this paved highway that is
Mm-hmm.
the conditioning that comes from your early life. I mean, because these pathways are laid down in like the first 5 years of life where you learn some of these patterns. And that's there. It's smooth. It's easy to drive on. That's the default path. But there's also this field off to the side, or a forest, or a jungle, or something, and you can as you walk that path over and over on purpose, you wear it down, and it gets wider, and it gets smoother, and you can eventually pave that, and then you've got two paved roads that you could choose between. And if you don't keep visiting the original path, if you visit less
Hmm.
and less, like eventually it'll grow over. And
Hmm.
I do believe you get to a point where it's actually easier and more automatic to take the new path, but I still think the old one exists. And if you get like really flooded, overwhelmed, sick, regressed, then, it can kick you back that direction.
There's signposts that you can put up to the signposts I can put up to remind me that there's a fork in the road. And it's almost like if you imagine a fork between these two paths, and I can put a sign there. And one way I do that is the questions I learned from Natalia Wistera, which are, does this come from the best in me? What impact am I having? Um, what is my intention? Do you remember? There were a couple others. Do you remember any others
Mhm.
that she taught us?
It was, do I mean well?
Oh yeah, do I mean well? Yeah. Very simple things, but the pathways in my brain, the old pathway, the answer to all those would be the negative answer. Do I mean well? No. Does this come from the best in me? No. And it's a simple question. When I teach people these questions, it almost feels kind of childish,
Mm.
but for me, they're really useful just to pause and be like, being aware of the pathways in my brain, can I put a signpost to remind myself which way do I want to go? And that takes pausing. And so what we're talking about here is self-confrontation, which is in order for me to become a better person, I have to deal honestly with the person I am right now.
Hmm. But why do you have to do it yourself? Why can't you get someone else to do this for you?
Um, it's I think it's the nature of living creatures to resist someone else trying to turn me into another path.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the end, it's always going to be these. Especially, I'm talking about these very deeply internal processes. Like there is no one who could help me be. No one can sit there in men's group with me while I'm thinking these silent, judgmental thoughts and deal with
Hmm.
that. It has to be me. And
Yeah.
and the other thing is just I mean, I'm pretty good at hiding my intentions, what I want to. And so, I mean, I have been helped by, people who've confronted me externally, but what they have been leading to me is like, James, you need to do this for yourself. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to show you how this works. And I'm going to show it to you over and over and over. And honestly, the most powerful thing I can do, the most powerful example that I've seen is people self-confronting them in front of me. So instead of, I mean, talking to me about what I'm doing is one, but like Natalia talking about her internal experience of ongoing self-confrontation on a daily basis was really powerful to me because that's what I needed to know. That was this is how it actually works, and almost kind of a normalization that it's okay to face constant temptation to treat people poorly.
Hmm.
That was very liberating to me because I tend to get pretty discouraged, or it's not so discouraged until I normalized it in my brain. I was constantly looking away from it. I was like, oh, I can't really, because I had this defined as, well, that's what a bad person would do, as opposed to, no, this is what I do, and I'm not a bad person. And so if I can normalize it and make it part of it's okay to be this way, and I want to work on changing that, and that's been really
Yeah.
helpful to me.
Yeah, I think as adults, we have to be in charge of ourselves, and the same way no one else can make you take care of your body, no one can make you take care of your mind. And you just have to manage your own behavior. You're with yourself all the time. You wouldn't put up with anybody else reminding you 50 times a day anyway. So even if you could get someone to do it,
No.
so it
Hmm.
has to come from you. And it is this ongoing thing of just being willing to really look at, like, okay, was that fair of me? Uh, if I take a bird's eye view, would I have a problem with what I'm saying or how I'm saying it or how my face looks as I do? Um, really like trying to be real about what it's like for somebody to have you talk to them.
Mm. I love how you said take a bird's eye view. I really think there's so much power in imagining an external camera. I love to fly drones, and this is the thought when you said bird's eye view. I was just because I talk to people about putting a camera on the different walls of the room and looking at it in three-dimensional space, which I think is helpful.
Yeah,
But I was just imagining, what if you took a drone and flew it around you and just looked at yourself from all these different angles? I think it's really helpful because you were saying what was the expression on my face, right?
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah. I mean,
taking that external viewpoint is powerful.
right. I like the idea of visualizing it as a drone. Yeah, you can fly all around.
Yeah.
Got it. But
Hmm.
yeah, the self-confrontation is like taking responsibility for yourself, your own functioning. And if you're going to do that, you have to be willing to look at it and be honest about what's there. And it's hard to
Hmm.
look at yourself. So it is like not just on a willingness level, it's actually hard for your brain to accurately track yourself. And so
Hmm.
that's where it's helpful to have a partner or a therapist or a coach or close friends that are willing to say, hey, here's what I see you doing right now. I don't love it. Got some
Yeah.
objections to it.
So powerful. We have a deeply ingrained culture of false reflection. So I call it sometimes false validation, where I'm going to reflect back to you validation that doesn't really reflect what I really think of you. And
Yeah.
it's very ingrained into our culture, and it's just so accepted that that's okay. But there is a better way of learning how to. I'm going to tell you what I really think and make it clear that I'm on your side because I am actually on your side. And that's so hard to learn how to do and so hard to get used to doing it that way.
hmm And I think this is the other reason that it's the self-confrontation matters so much is that what we are not willing to look at in ourselves because we can't calm ourselves down once we know it or something. We're not going to be calm when people show us an accurate picture of ourselves either. And
Yeah.
so like you end up taking out on other people your difficulty integrating this thing about yourself and you end
Mhm.
up getting on your partner or something like that because you're not willing to deal with it. And so the more you practice just like dealing with I'm a person and I do some messed up stuff sometimes and I can also hold real compassion for myself while knowing that. Take
Mhm.
accountability, keep growing, but not be perfectionistic about it because that's never kind. And if you're being
Mhm.
perfectionistic about yourself, you're not going to be kind to anybody else either.
The thing that helps me is saying I'm a normal person who makes normal mistakes
I like that.
and
Yeah,
framing it. That's been really, it's so simple, but it's been so helpful to me. That came from my therapist,
that's
as
great.
opposed
Like,
to my brain goes to, it's almost like this dichotomy, like I'm either perfect or I'm garbage. And
yeah,
there's no room for making normal mistakes. Like I look at everybody else, I'm like, oh yeah, they obviously make normal mistakes. And I'm just like, well, that's fine. But for some reason, for me, it's like, there's just no room. Like I fall into this pit of just like despair and shame about, being a horrible person. It's hard to describe. It's like a blackness.
yeah, yeah. And it's not a productive space when you're going into
Mm.
that game spiral. Like, it's really hard to work with yourself when that's what's going on. Um,
Mm.
I really like that phrase. I'm a normal person who makes normal mistakes, and like normal mistakes is a really big range. Look around. People are getting a lot of stuff wrong all the time because this is really hard and none of us have done it before,
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
live
And
a human life.
she she offered that to me as a way for me to work past my fragility. So for a while she was talking to me a lot about fragility, where She wanted me to be more flexible, more resilient, because whenever I was criticized, I would just crumble. I mean, and it's not just that I would crumble and then I would do destructive things. I would start to hide the truth, or I'd start to twist reality, or I'd start to portray myself as superior or innocent in some way. And I would do things that were difficult to work with. And so she was trying to help me move to a place of, can it just be okay that you made a mistake? It sounds so silly talking about it, but it was really hard for me. It was
Yeah.
seriously hard for me.
But yeah, I mean that's showing how like if you're operating in your own mind from this place of like I'm either always doing great or I'm garbage, then anytime someone tries to
Yes.
talk to you about having a problem with something you've done, then you're going to slide into I'm garbage, which
Yeah.
makes it really difficult for people to talk to you about things they want you to do different to
Hmm.
and for you to do anything different. Like really it's just so hard to operationalize from that place.
And I was willing to put up I'd mount this really impressive defense. Like I put so much energy into proving that what they were saying was wrong, when maybe the thing I was being accused of was just being a normal person. And
Yeah.
so
But
it
the
was
thing
really
you're trying
helpful
to
for me.
prove is no, I'm not garbage.
Yeah, and so in my mind, it would just turn into like, it is not okay for me to be seen this way. Like I can't
Yeah.
handle it, and that had to change. So
Yeah. So this is like the whole idea in Crucible is that the best place to get pressured into dealing with this, becoming capable of dealing with it, is a marriage for
hmm
most people.
hmm
And like this is just a normal developmental process that people start in different places depending on what kind of childhood and family they had. But everyone has real work to do on this. It's not easy.
yeah,
So I
it's
always
definitely
visualize
not
it as
easy.
like a mountain with like a path spiraling around it, and you move higher and higher. And theoretically, there is a top of the mountain where you're enlightened. I have like a lot of influence from Buddhism, it, traditions where enlightenment is a theoretical possibility. But I don't seem to get there. So, what seems to happen for me is I go round and round, and I am gaining elevation. But every time I look off the path, look down, then the view is pretty similar. It does change gradually over time, but it's really slow, and that's that like core conditioning for me. Is I feel like I do end up back in familiar places, and I'm not sure that will ever stop.
I've heard it described as a spiral because it's both an ascending path and a circular path at the same time.
Yeah, I
And
visualize a spiral around a mountain. Yeah.
yeah, and so you can focus on the circularity of it. I'm facing the same challenges over and over. I've struggled with anxious attachment for many years, and I always, it's like coming around the mountain again, right? And I'm like, oh, so, well, this happened a few days ago. My anxious attachment is very focused on my wife, and she was at work, and I was expecting her to come home, and then she stopped at Target, and she didn't come home until very late, and I mean, theoretically, I'm an adult and I'm going to be okay. But realistically, I started to panic, which I
Mm.
hadn't panicked like that in a long time, but it was just good old anxious attachment. But I felt like I was coming around the mountain again, seeing the same marker. And so the spiral aspect of that is I'm like, oh, my anxious attachment is here. I'm going to go for a run and then I'll feel better. And I did. And so, from one point of view, I was pretty disappointed to feel that panic. And from another point of view, I immediately knew that if I go for a run, I'm going to be okay. And I did, and I was. And it was just like, ah. So I experienced this anxious attachment panic and I dealt with it immediately and I was totally fine half an hour later. So that's kind of this idea that I am on an upward journey and I'm also coming around to this same place on the mountain that I've been at before. Well, and if I look at my life, it has been quite a while since my anxious attachment felt unworkable to me, which it used to feel unworkable all the time. And so it's still there, but it didn't really even bother me that much. I even told my wife when she got home, I'm like, yeah, I'm having some anxious attachment tonight. And she's like, oh, and so, but I handled it better. She handled it better, so it turns out to be okay. In years past, she would have gone into her own panic around, like, oh, I've failed, I'm a bad wife, blah, blah, blah. All she did was stop at Target on the way home. Like, it wasn't that big a deal, Should we end there, Catherine? Okay, thank you. I'm gonna hit the stop button.